I'm Liam.
I'm Wayne.
You're listening to In Film We Trust YouTube.
A place where we post clips from our recent episode.
All links down below in the description.
And now, on with the show.
At this point, Wayne, with our recent choices, I think we almost need an interpretive philosophy degree.
At the very least, I want a doctorate of philosophy.
Because
I think we deserve that.
This is another film that is very interpretive.
Very interpretive, very strange. We're on this kind of strange movie kick as of late.
What, Tetsuo and now Taxidermia?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be institutionalized soon, Wayne.
Surely, yes. And the people who made this maybe should be as well.
György Pálfi?
György Pálfi, yes. That's the best we can manage pronunciation-wise, unfortunately.
Do you know what, Wayne?
Mm-hmm.
Same age as us when he made this. 33 years old.
33 years old, yes.
2.4 mil budget.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever think at this stage in your life, this age, you'd ever make a film like this?
Well,
I definitely didn't.
This would be a stretch at any age.
It would be,
I don't
yes.
think little György would have thought at 33 he'd be making this film.
I don't imagine he would, but it was 2006 he released this, and he directed and co-wrote it, didn't he?
Co-wrote?
Yeah, who was the person he co-wrote it with?
Well, this film, it's structured in three parts, essentially. You could almost say this is three short stories in one, three linked short stories. And the first two parts were adapted from a novel. I'm not even going to say the guy's name because it's going to be a butchery.
I can understand.
But his first name is Lajos.
Right.
We'll go with that, Wayne.
We'll go with that.
We'll go with that.
Yes. And it's billed as, this whole film, these three stories, as a surrealist comedy, drama, horror. It's a fair amount altogether.
Do you think there's a lot of comedy in?
No.
What about the pecked penis?
Well, that was funny.
Yes, that was funny.
Only because of what we'll get to later. But yeah, kind of unintentional random bursts of laughter. But I don't think there's any jokes in it, as you would say.
Randomly, Hungary's official selection for the best foreign film at the Oscars.
That would have been interesting. Imagine if the Academy gave the award to this.
Have you ever noticed with the Oscars, for example, their foreign film category is often more interesting than the actual best film category?
Because they're usually much more interesting films. Because maybe with the non-English markets, they're more open to more bizarre films. Like when Parasite won in 2019, I think that was seen as a breakthrough because that was, first of all, a non-English language
Fantastic film.
Fantastic film, yeah. Also, it was a lot more interesting. It had a much more kind of complex... It wasn't like an epic romantic drama, one of those big crowd pleasers.
It did have some notoriety in Europe over here because it was nominated for the Uncertain Regard category at the Cannes Film Festival.
Yes, which the section for says here, unusual styles and non-traditional stories. I'd very much agree with that assessment.
I think you'd be a bit twisted if you didn't agree with that word.
Absolutely, yeah. And it had a $2.4 million budget.
Yep.
But it
made
was
much back, or?
No, it was released in the US. It was a very limited release. It was released for 3 months. It played in 2 theaters and it made just over 11 grand.
11 grand.
So that's, I don't know if they
right, but I'm assuming though that wouldn't be a wide release. That would be probably art house cinemas.
Well, I did think, how could you mass market this? Imagine trying to market this to a mainstream audience. It would be very difficult.
We should also say, even though this is a Hungarian film, it's dealing with Hungarian themes. It was a co-production between Hungary, France, and several other countries.
Yes, it was.
Which I think almost European cinema does quite well because you're typically working with a lower budget, you can experiment a little more. There's not as much to lose in a sense, financially.
There's not as much pressure, you could say. It's more kind of go out and more auteur-driven kind of films, yes.
Which I think is a huge benefit for European cinema over, mainstream American cinema.
It's certainly a benefit for us audiences because we get to see much more interesting films.
If you want to see fake penises getting pecked and literally bucket loads of vomit, I mean...
This is the movie for you.
If that's your fetish, you're in for one.
HighOnFilms.com called it, and I quote, a delicious film for those who can digest it. I'm not sure I would have chosen those particular words.
They're pretty apt, Wayne. Digest. I don't know about delicious though. Delicious in what way?
No, it's not right. That's not the right word. I watched an interview actually. Speaking of Pálfi, I don't know about you. I'd never heard of him before.
Nope.
But I watched an interview he did for Freefall, which was a film he did in 2014, and he said he believes strongly in the visual elements of cinema. He likes showing things which are grotesque and absurd, but also funny.
Did you think, cinematography-wise, it was almost reminiscent of a Terry Gilliam? It was hyper-real, but at the same time, its surrealist aspects made it almost borderline fantasy at the same time.
It did have a, like you say, a borderline fantastical quality. Yeah, like Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus or something like that. Yeah, it did have that bizarre visual quality to
it was
it.
taking reality, exploding reality to the minutiae, and then there was an added layer of fantasy to it.
Yeah, it's a exaggerated version of the world we live in, you could say. The film is essentially, when you watch it, it's a highly interpretive film, which we'll get to, but it's essentially, the best I could find, it's a metaphorical retelling of the history of Hungary.
Well, we span World War II, the Soviet era, and up to contemporary 2006, you say it was made?
Yeah.
So the contemporary times.
Here's a question. How much did you know, or how much do you know about Hungarian history?
I failed that. No, nothing, Wayne. Less than zero.
Yeah, basically, thinking back to school, I don't remember doing anything on Hungary. So I think the thing with this film is if you didn't know anything about the history of the country, a lot of stuff in this film would go right over your head.
Well, that's the interesting concept right there, Wayne. I think unless you're native Hungarian or steeped in the history of Hungary, even for us, I think you're losing a lot in translation, so to speak. I think there's themes and topics that you're going to get as a general human for humanity, but there's got to be little particulars you're not going to pick up on, because I don't think we've picked up on everything, and I think we're pretty forthright in saying that, right?
Definitely. Even when I was researching this film, people who were watching it and researching it were saying, this is not clear, we're not sure about this. So even people who are really diving into it, really studying it closely, even they have trouble, like you say, picking up on the particulars. You can get the general overall gist, but yeah, the particulars are a bit harder to make out.